these are the commercial tanned hides. We use some of them in the program, but for the commercial tanned hides, you're going to be making some charts, and you'll need to place a little swatch of hide to the proper name of them. And also there's some other things throughout the program where you need to know thickness of hides and what they're used for. So we'll start off with the thickest hide, and that is it's a buffalo, commercially tanned buffalo hide. So very thick and has a lot of stiffness to it. And this is just a piece of it, because if it was a full hide, it's really quite large, and they go anywhere from like 36 square feet up to like maybe 42 square feet for a buffalo hide. So it is really quite thick, even though this has probably been thinned down. It's quite thick, and it is stretchy, but not that stretchy because of the stiffness and the thickness of it. So when you send hides out to be tanned, what the factory does is they shear one whole layer off the flesh side. So there's probably this thickness that has been sheared off of this one side of the whole hide, and it, when it's chemically tanned and finished processing, it would be fuzzy like this side on both sides, and they call it a split hide. So when you send a hide out to get tanned, you're only going to get this side back, and the factory keeps the split hide and they resell that. So you kind of get ripped off a little. But most people don't know that they thin these out. But that's where you get your split hide, is the half of this that's doesn't get back to you. So that's the buffalo. This is the cowhide. So this is a chemically tanned cow hide, and it depends on how much they thinned off of it on your thickness. So this one isn't quite that thick, and it does have a whole lot of stretch to it. And then again, with a cowhide, they're similar to a buffalo, so you're still looking at anywhere from 38 square feet and up when you're getting one tanned, or if you're purchasing one. So that's the chemically tanned cow, and this is a chemically tanned cow as well, but it's more of a garment leather. So garment leathers is what you would use when they're either making, like if you have a leather couch, a leather jacket, and it's more even. The thickness will be pretty precise throughout the whole hide, and there's not really that much stretch to the garment leather, and that could be all the dyes that go in it and things like that. But it's and these garment leathers, you can buy them, they're not so much like a full size of a hide, the way a hide is shaped. They come more like long and narrow, so maybe four feet across, and they could be up to 16 feet long. So they're different shapes, but it's your hide that you would use maybe for lacing on a dream catcher, or if you're making a jacket or something like that. They can be used on moccasins if you're making different colors of moccasins. The next one that we have is, this is a chemically tanned moose hide. So a moose hide is going to be similar to an elk hide when it's tanned in the factory. You get all different grades as well, so there's a lot of stretch to it. Again, it's a lot thinner than the cowhide, but it's softer overall when you're working with it. And again, if it's a, you know, there's no moose that are raised in farms, so you're guaranteed to have some kind of flaws in it, whether it's scraping itself in the bush, or maybe it had ticks. So your hide, usually you don't get like a number one hide. Usually there's a flaw, a scrape, some little spots that'll be on it due to whether it had a little injury or something. But you're looking up to like about 46 square feet or less for an elk. Elk would be not quite as big as a moose, maybe up to about 36 to 38 square feet in an elk hide. And then in the tanners, they usually tan them like with a little bit of color, so your elk and your moose are like a little more orangey on one side than the tan color. So that was your moose or your elk hide, commercially tanned. This one here is a chemically tanned deer hide, and that's a number one hide. So these will either come from the wild, or there's a lot of deer farms. So you'll find that when it's a farmed deer, you're not going to have as many scars on the hide. You might have a few little holes, but that's from the skinning, or in the factory those happen. So a number one hide should mean that you shouldn't have a whole lot of fuzz and scars on it. And when you order something like this deer hide here is probably about usually they have a mark, which is right here. So what that is saying is that it's 10 square feet, and it's a number one hide. So most hides will have the marking on there to tell you what size it is. And again, if this hide you sent it out, it probably has the one side shaven off, and they sell as a split. And so the hides vary with the deer. It could anywhere be from 6 square feet up to, I've seen them up to 14 square feet for the deer hide. And that you would use for a lot of things. You can make dresses, any type of small product. In our program we use the deer hide for a lot of small pouches, wrapping, dream catchers, and you can make like clothing out of it if you wanted to. So that's the chemically tanned deer. This one here is a new style of leather that they're producing, and that's through Buckskin in Calgary. And it's like, because they have such trouble getting hides from the wild, like moose, deer, elk, what they tried to come up with was a hide that felt like deer, had like the softness and the thickness of a deer hide, but it's actually made out of cow. So this is what they came up with in their chemical methods. So you could, it's quite large, but it's can be actually not bad. It's quite flawless in color for a large piece of hide. This one here is 20 square feet. So they have the 20, and it's a number one according to this style of hide. And these could run like $5.95 a square foot. So when you have like a chemically tanned hide that's either a cow, usually the hides are a little cheaper than if you were to buy this deer hide. This deer hide could run anywhere from $6 to $9 a square foot. So your cow hides and stuff are a lot cheaper, and they're not exactly the same color, and when you feel them, you'd feel the texture. This is a lot softer, the deer, and this cowhide that was tanned to be like a deer, it still has that little bit of stiffness to it. But it's something new that they're coming out with due to the lack of being able to get hides, deer hides, moose hide, elk hide, and at a lesser cost. And we use this because it doesn't have as much stretch as other hides. It works a lot better for, like, if you were doing a less costly style footwear, or even to make lacings to wrap a dream catcher or things like that. So that's the commercially tanned cow deer hide. These two hides here are colorful, and they're a garment leather, and they're pigskin. And the way you can tell if they're pigskin is if you looked really closely, you could see where the hair follicles were on this pigskin. And they're not very big, they're very, very thin and very soft, and they're really good for making different garments. They have a really soft texture on this is where would be against the meat, and this is where the hair was, and you could see the hair follicles. So good for garments, like if you're making jackets, some sort of a fine garment like a nice shirt or things like that. This is the split hide. So when you tan a hide, they shave off a layer of it, and you get a hide that is suede on both sides. So that's the piece they shave off, and it's called a split hide. So your pigskin would actually be quite thick with the two layers together. And those are just used for like fancy garments. Like, you wouldn't use them for making a moccasin, or you could use them for wrapping a dream catcher, but they're really quite thin and quite stretchy. The next thing we have is a chemically tanned rawhide. So this is part of a hide that is a deer. So it sounds really quite papery thin. Some areas along the edge you can almost see through. They're very, very thin. And the rawhide you would use for making a drum, little mini drum earrings, or even lacing. You could cut lacing off of this for snowshoes and things like that, but it's very thin. So we do use this in the program for doing smaller type jewelry, whereas a moose hide or anything like that is going to be very thick, and we don't use that very often at all in the program. But for the chemically tanned deer rawhide, we do use a bit. So those are your samples for the commercially tanned hides, and that you'll be using on your commercial tan chart.